Simcha Yakubovich is a filmmaker and a journalist, and he shares a fascinating piece of information regarding Palestinian refugees and how the UN deals with the refugees throughout the world, how they deal with refugees who are Palestinian, and how they are dealt with completely differently. Another double standard from the UN. What a shock, right? Listen to how he explains this very articulately.
One of the big issues in the world today, headline news, is the Palestinian refugee crisis. You'll see for a moment why I put refugee in quotation marks, but just let's say this. There's really two agencies that deal with refugees. One for the world and a separate one for the Palestinians. Let me explain. The whole world, all refugees on planet Earth fall under the category of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, UNHCR for short. They're responsible for all refugees. If you have to run across the border today and become a refugee, UNHCR, you fall under their mandate. They will take care of you. And their definition of refugees, if you fled, crossed the border, an international border, and you're afraid to go back, then you're a refugee. But your kid is not a refugee. You can't pass refugee status down, especially if your kid is now, has a Canadian passport or an American passport or a French passport. He or she is not a refugee anymore. That's the UNHCR. That definition works for every person on planet Earth except Palestinians. They have a different bureaucracy. The United Nations Relief Works Agency, UNRWA, UNRWA. And they have a different definition. You can pass through your dad, male, your refugee status. So even though there were 700,000 Palestinian refugees in the Arab-Israeli war in 1948, 47-48, at that time they were fighting, and there were 700,000 Palestinians who fled. They were refugees, and they're not alive anymore, most of them. Maybe a couple still left from 1948, but they're not alive. But they can pass their refugee status on to their kids, their grandkids, forever. So it doesn't matter. You could be Bella or Gigi Hadid, you could be multimillionaires in California. As far as UNRWA is concerned, they'll count you as a Palestinian refugee. They'll inflate the numbers. So because of these two different agencies, you have two different outcomes. Every refugee population in the world goes down with time, except the Palestinians. They go up with time. So at the same time as 700,000 Palestinians fled the Arab-Israeli conflict, 14 million Hindus, Muslims, and Sikhs fled the division of the Indian subcontinent. 14 million. Today, out of those 14 million refugees in 1947, there's zero left. But the Palestinians, they went from having 700,000 refugees to almost 8 million. People die off. How did that happen? Well, everybody's a refugee. If they have one male in their lineage, which we don't have to really check too hard, who claims to be or was a Palestinian refugee. Now, you got to understand the consequence of this. The consequence is that the UNHCR has a bureaucratic interest in solving refugee problems. Why? Because they've got to put out a lot of fires. Today they're in Eritrea, tomorrow they're in Sudan. They got to put out the fires. But UNRWA has only one group of people to take care of, the Palestinian refugees. If there was peace in the Middle East, UNRWA would be out of business. And it's a multi-billion-dollar business. There's over 30,000 UNRWA employees. So let's take UNRWA schools. Some of the teachers are Hamas members. They're terrorists by State Department definition. And what are they teaching? They publish little books to inculcate hate in little Arab babies, to just teach them to die and kill. Abuse, yes. And what do they do with this school besides teach hate? They put missiles in the basement and ammunition. so that it's a lose-lose for Israel. Either they let them fire all the missiles, or they bomb the school and then they're baby killers. That's UNRWA. UNRWA has an interest in perpetuating the conflict. UNHCR has an interest in solving conflicts. Now, you could say, whoa, and what's the consequence? And why is that? Well, the why is very easy. The Palestinians are fighting Jews. So that has been weaponized in the war against the Jews. It's not that people love Arabs. There's 10 million Arab refugees in Syria. Who cares about them? Who's going on the campuses of Harvard and Columbia and saying, solve that problem? Nobody. What about the refugees in Sudan, in Eritrea? Nobody cares. The only refugees that people seem to care about are the Palestinian refugees that are actually, most of them, not refugees. Why? Because it's been weaponized, this issue, in the war against the Jews.
Wow, that's exactly the story. You see the double standard, you see the hypocrisy. And why are they doing this? It's all anti-Semitism. And I believe as Jews, what we need to know more than anything else is to acknowledge, no, there's nothing we're doing wrong. There's nothing that we are doing that's causing this. There's nothing that we can do differently that will change it. It is embedded. The only thing we can do is stand tall and be proud Jews, and to make it clear that anything that threatens us, we will attack before it attacks us, and live by that so that we actually do it. And when the world screams, let the world know. Just like there are terrorists called Hamas, there is a nation called Israel that will attack you if you threaten to attack us.